All right, welcome back. We're here talking about the NFC South, and we're on to the New Orleans Saints.
New Orleans.
For those who are still watching, don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that notification button. I know we went over the Panthers and Falcons.
Ring the bell.
Ding, ding. We went over the Panthers and Falcons at length because those two teams had the most drastic changes. We're moving on to two teams that don't have those drastic changes. So let's go over what their fantasy impact should be. And we'll start off with the quarterback for the New Orleans Saints, and that's Derek Carr. I went into it last year. We both agreed at the same point. Derek Carr is going to be a guy that everybody's going to be drafting and overdrafting because of the new location he's at and the weapons he has. But we talked about it at length. Derek Carr has never been the guy to throw over 27 touchdown passes.
Yep. He's
never been the guy, he only threw over 4,000 yards a couple times. The hard part was losing Devontae Adams, a receiver of that pedigree, going to the place he was. Everybody was hoping he could dink and dunk to Alvin Kamara. Well, both of them had seasons that were not fantasy worthy and made it very difficult. I'm still on the same page this year, is that I am not a Derek Carr truther. There's guys I'd rather take a chance on over Derek Carr here. And I don't even love... Again, this was a team we wanted to avoid last year based on the amount of mouths to feed, and it's another team I'm trying to avoid this year as well.
Yeah, I mean, this was we talked about last year where there's just a lot of mouths to feed, does spread the ball around. Olave still had a really good season last year, so I don't think you should be avoiding Olave. Rashid Shaheed is a really good option this year, and I think that there's other interesting pieces. Kamara is a guy that you definitely should still be drafting in leagues, and I think Rashid Shaheed is just such a dynamic playmaker that he's worth throwing a dart at. Especially, I've seen him kind of elevated. Now, here's the interesting comparison because these two players are kind of going around each other in drafts. Is Khalil Shakir and Rashid Shaheed. Great names.
Yeah, I know.
I value Khalil Shakir a little bit more than I value Rashid Shaheed. But I think that they're very, very similar style playmakers.
And I'm on the other side of the fence with this one. I value Shaheed more, and I value it more, and I know you love Shaheed, so I know that was difficult for you to say.
It is.
But I value Shaheed more because of the home run ability. And I think
but Shakir has that, and I just think he's in an offense that's a little bit better in terms of throwing the ball deep. And
I think Derek Carr is a fantastic deep ball passer. That's where he gets his yard. That's where he gets his yardage.
I do too. I do too.
I mean, Derek Carr last year at 3,800 yards. He did have 4 consecutive seasons of 4,000 yards before 2022. But again, he's never thrown for over 27 touchdown passes. He's not a big interceptions guy, but he threw for 25 last year in New Orleans on 548 attempts. That was his third or fourth highest attempts.
Pull up a stat real quick.
Yeah.
And bring up Taysom Hill on his passing touchdowns. Because I want to add that to the quarterback play. So, Derek Carr is a guy that we talked about Bryce Young and where we're drafting him, and I think or Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is going above Derek Carr for me. I'm not drafting Derek Carr unless I have to.
But you're drafting him as your QB2. You're not drafting him as your QB1 because if you've fallen that far to where he's your QB1, I just think you're in trouble because he's a pocket passer that doesn't throw for over 30 touchdowns. Yes, he could hit that 4,000 yard mark. Although he
just doesn't give you the high enough floor.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is the part you need to hit to have a top quarterback finish.
I do want to talk about another. I don't think we need to waste a ton of time talking about Derek Carr
we're not going to. By the way, Taysom Hill, he
4 or 5.
I think
passing touchdowns
last year in 2023. His passing touchdowns were. He was 6 for 11 for 83 yards and a touchdown. He had 2 touchdowns the year before, and then 2 years in a row of 4.
One last year.
So only one last year, but he only one last year.
So the other quarterback I do want to talk about, and especially dynasty drafts or late round keepers, or for a redraft, a keeper league, is Spencer Rattler.
Uh-huh.
I think it's really interesting to if New Orleans starts to struggle this year.
I think they will.
And I think they will too. I think Spencer Rattler in the second half of the season might get a shot. And he
Don't
might
expect much from it, but I think
I don't expect much, but I think he does get a shot.
it's a good best ball bet.
And there's a lot of guys on this team like this that I do think are worth a shot. Like this might be a team like New Orleans is a team where you're looking at the third guy in the depth chart right now, or guys that are not in starting positions. There's a couple of them that I actually like throwing a dart at.
Well, you'd say there's Michael Thomas is not re-signing with them.
So the three guys are being A.T. Perry,
Yep.
Spencer Rattler, and Kendre Miller.
And I actually would rank them in as Kendre Miller, A.T. Perry, Spencer Rattler in that order.
I mean, I didn't rank them, but
No, I'm just saying that's how I would rank
Yeah.
them because
Yeah.
I think Kendre Miller is going to have a bigger grip on it. I mean, we're talking about Kamara not even showing up yet. Like he wants a contract, and I don't think New Orleans wants to pay him for an aged running back that is a one of those Swiss Army knife, good pass catching. He's getting hit a lot more and beat up a lot more, and a lot of people aren't missing tackles on him like they used to. And now Kendre Miller is a more well-rounded running back, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I still think that Kamara is very much worth it. He doesn't get hit. He doesn't take big hits. So he's getting hit a lot more, but he doesn't take big hits.
No, he's not a big back
he's
either, though.
He's elusive. He's a great pass catcher.
But we saw it last year with Derek Carr. Derek Carr is a downfield passer, and that's what hurt his fantasy value too.
Yeah, but we had multiple games with Kamara that he had 10+ receptions
because he was the
game.
only pass catcher.
All right, but like Derek Carr is going to start learning how to use that because not everything's downfield.
Agree.
So I still think Kamara is a good weapon. You've seen his value drop this year even more than last year, and that was last year he had the looming suspension, and I still think that this year you're seeing him go in the 6th or 7th round, which is where most people were able to get him last year with the 4-game suspension. So he's a guy that from a running back perspective, Kendre Miller is a guy that I want late in the draft to throw a dart at because if anything does happen with Kamara or, Kamara starts holding out, but I think you forget how good Kamara actually is.
Yeah, I don't forget.
I think people forget how good he is.
I don't think they do. But you got to look at the stats. Like the stats don't lie. Like yes, he played 13 games. He still got targeted 86 times. That was more than the previous 2 seasons. In the previous 2 seasons, he had a 15-game and a 13-game season.
Right.
But this is the first time we saw a dip in touchdowns, 100%. So he went from 2 years ago to 1 last year in receiving wise. This is his yards per target. I want to bring this up was the lowest of his career, and his yards per reception were the lowest in his career in terms of those 2 stats. And yeah, he netted 460 yards, which is only a little bit more than the year before that and the year before that. But that's because of the total amount of targets he had was up at 86. His rushing was the 2nd lowest of his career last year too. This team's offensive line was really hurt last year, beat up. It's not that it's gotten much better either. I think this is the hard part of me wanting to draft a running back on this team with any sort of high draft capital like Alvin Kamara is because of the opportunity. Like there's running backs around him. Like Joe Mixon has an opportunity to finish higher as a running back than Alvin Kamara.
I mean, I would probably take Aaron Jones and Joe Mixon over Kamara.
Yeah, and so that's the thing is like I don't find myself drafting Kamara because
take James Cook over.
I'm not buying the dip in the stats, thinking that there's going to be a jump. Like it wasn't like a drastic dip, like saying oh something was wrong. It was enough of a dip to say like this could trend in that direction again this year, or he could be right around where he was.
Yeah, and add 4 more games to that, and then he would have been perfectly fine around his numbers would have been perfectly fine. Let me preface everything, or not preface, but let me say on PPR, I would absolutely draft him.
Yeah, I would still draft him.
His value is still high.
I draft him over Mixon.
Yeah,
for sure. Jones could be interesting because with Hawkinson being out for some time, he could get in the passing game. But I still think Kamara is going to have more targets than Jones.
I also think that last year, like the one thing that has hurt Kamara over the last 2 seasons is Taysom Hill.
And he can still hurt him. That's the thing.
I know.
And what if Kendre Miller gets more touches too?
Well, we thought that Jamal Williams was going to be more involved than he was.
Well, he was until he just couldn't produce, and then he wasn't.
Right. And so
I think Kendre Miller can produce.
I think
he was a rookie last year.
I think Kendre Miller could produce. We got to see it. I don't he's not taking early down workload. There are a lot of times where, especially we expect them to be behind in games, Kamara's going to be in there.
Yeah. Yeah, and we saw that. That's why it was a lot of trying to like get him open. I mean, the little dinks that Carr was doing, they were short passes, and Kamara just couldn't get open. But we'll say it again. PPR, I'm drafting Kamara. Non-PPR, I'm fading him for the running backs that are in the same range. Like we said, Mixon, Aaron Jones, and some of those other guys.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. Like if he's available later on, like and he falls, like I'm not afraid to draft him. Yeah. I wasn't afraid to draft him last year, and I think he paid dividends for me. I'm not afraid to draft him this year. Do I like Aaron Jones over him? Yeah. Do I like Joe Mixon over him? Yeah. Do
you like Zach Moss over him?
No.
Okay, so that's where you draw the line. Because Zach Moss is like a round later.
Yeah, and so there are guys that I don't like totally put Tony Pollard over him.
Well, I mean, that backfield is going to be a mixed bag, too, because you have two similar running backs. But let's move on to the receivers here, or I should say receiver.
Well, I mean, we still need to talk about.
We know Shakir's there, and I know that you like A.T. Perry. Chris Olave is a guy that I haven't been drafting a lot of, but he's going to be that guy that gives you 1,000 yards. His touchdowns are going to vary, and if his touchdowns are high, which they haven't been, he's going to be a top 10 finisher. If his touchdowns are low, he's going to be a top 20 finisher.
So he's a guy that, like, since he's come into the league, I've just never drafted, and I'm okay not drafting. Like, I just think where he's going, there's other guys around him that I like better.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's a matter of preference. Like in that range in the second round is a matter of preference.
I just don't think New Orleans Saints scored enough points for me to warrant taking the top receiver there over a top receiver in another team that scores more often.
Well, again, this kind of is the same conversation as Drake London, right? Yeah. I think I value both of them in the very, very same. They're very, very similar.
And they were going right next to each other in the past, and now Drake London gets Kirk Cousins, and we're talking something different.
So I think they're still right there for me because I'm taking Devontae Adams over him. I'm taking Devonta Smith.
I'm taking Waddle over him still.
Yeah,
especially with the contract extension Waddle just got. I'm taking it over him.
Yeah, again, DK, Ayuk, like I'm taking all those guys over Olave.
But I do like the difference between Olave and that I like better than London too at times. And plus, you can get him deeper this year. Is he's a very good deep ball catcher, and he gets open well down the field. And Carr missed him a lot last year, and there were a couple times where if Carr hit him, like this guy would have had a different season, a couple more touchdowns, and would have finished higher. So that's the thing I do like about Olave, and I'm willing to take a shot on him. But again, if he's fallen into that in that little group there, I'm not going in that group. So we'll talk real quick. We talked about Shaheed. We like Shaheed. He's a home run hitter. He's a big guy. He's a downfield threat, and Carr's a deep ball passer. He's a good late round flyer to take here. But there's a guy that you like a little bit more that could sneak up here and is a sleeper pick of this year. And believe it or not, Shaheed was your sleeper pick last year.
Yeah.
So
worked out pretty good.
It did.
And between Shaheed and Tank Dell last year, my sleeper picks worked out. A.T. Perry is kind of my sleeper pick for the wide receivers in the deep class. We saw a little bit of him last year, and I liked what I saw last year out of him. I think another year in the offseason, another year working in this system.
No Michael Thomas.
You have speed and Olave on the other. You have speed with Shaheed and Olave on the other side. In these three wide receiver sets, if A.T. Perry can work himself into that three wide receiver set, he's going to get a lot more. He's not going to get attention to him. And I think his production can go.
Well, he's very athletic. Like the catches he made were very acrobatic.
Is he going to have Puka numbers? No. I think everyone's looking for that.
Yeah, who's the next Puka?
I'm talking about value guys that I can get that are going to give me mid-round production.
Yeah.
Right? That's what my ideal sleeper is going to give me. Now, you'll hit a couple of those times when you have like the Tank Dells that absolutely go off. You're like, or the Pukas that you draft in the 14th round and they absolutely go off. But not everyone's going to be like that. But what you want is the guys that you can draft in the 13th or 14th round that are going to give you 8th round production. And I think A.T. Perry can absolutely do that.
Yeah, he's going to have some boom weeks where he has like 80 yards and 2 touchdowns or a touchdown.
I've had him in 2 of my best ball teams. I drafted him.
Yep.
And I really like him for that because he is a bigger body. He's a physical receiver. He has speed to him, and he can run deep routes. he just hasn't been in a position where he's gotten either a lot of work.
Well, he's been depth charted. That's the problem.
He's been depth charted.
And everybody was hoping that Michael Thomas was going to be the Michael Thomas of old, and it wasn't the case. In fact, he is still looking for a team. So,
and the only person they brought in was Cedric Wilson. And so,
which I thought he did pretty good for the Dolphins here and there. But again, Perry brings something to the table that Cedric can.
Exactly. And I think that Perry is going to absolutely take that third wide receiver role at some point this season.
Let's quick wrap up here on the Saints and talk about Taysom Hill.
Juwan Johnson.
And Juwan Johnson. Well, Juwan Johnson had a bad leg injury. He is getting surgery. He's supposed to be back and ready by season, and hoping that's the case. But Taysom Hill is still the tight end here to own, especially if your leagues allow him to play a tight end quarterback type of position. If your league allows it, his value goes to the roof because of that Swiss Army ability to run the ball, pass the ball. But you're going to have weeks where he has 5 points for you, 3 points for you, and you're going to have weeks where he has 30 points for you. So, the variability is tougher. My advice is if you want, you can get him late enough now to pair with somebody else. Like Brock Bowers, Taysom Hill is a great combination.
He's a fantastic best ball tight end.
Oh, yeah, he's the best ball tight end. And
so you should draft him in best ball. But from a redraft, standard scoring or PPR format, he's not a guy that there's other guys I would rather draft either before him or later. His value is really weird because his value is he's pushed down into that third tier of tight ends. So I value him over what he's being valued at. But do you take Luke Musgrave for Taysom Hill?
Well, when you want a tight end, and this is what we're talking about.
I'm just saying redraft league.
I'm saying redraft league. When you're looking for a tight end, you want consistency in that position, and Musgrave is going to give you that consistency. Can Taysom Hill win you a week? Absolutely can. Can he lose you a week? Yeah, he can too as well.
Yeah.
I mean, technically nobody could lose a week, but yeah, I mean, he gets you 2 points, and you needed 5 from a Monday night game from him. You lose, where you can get 5 easily from Musgrave every single week.
Yeah.
So. I don't know. I think at the end of the day, I'm taking a shot on Taysom Hill, but I'm backing it up with somebody like Musgrave.
Yeah,